Very warm welcome to Amishakil 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following are the latest news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian news channels and all other news agencies. So please, let's go to the news.
Tonight, the breaking news as we come on the air, tornado watches right now nearly a dozen states, and now the nor'easter taking aim at the northeast with Memorial Day weekend nearing. Also tonight here, we remember a famous actor who made everyone laugh on Cheers. First tonight, the new tornado watches and warnings, multiple states, the new funnel cloud spotted just a short time ago, and the dangerous winds. A police SUV struck by lightning, a confirmed EF4 touching down, winds 170 miles per hour. And now this possible late-season nor'easter taking aim at parts of the northeast just as the holiday approaches. Ginger Z standing by to time this out. Also tonight, former President Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis, and late today, the former president's spokesperson and what he revealed about the last time the former president was tested for this. Tonight, President Trump at his trip to Capitol Hill warning House Republicans to get on board with his spending bill and what he said about Medicaid. Tonight, the major turn of that stunning jailbreak, a jail worker now arrested. What they say he did and what he claims an inmate said he would do to him if he didn't help. Tonight, the dramatic moment in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, his ex-girlfriend's mother taking the stand today, the photos she shared with the jury, and she testified that she took out a home equity loan on her house because she says Combs was demanding money from her. Tonight, President Trump revealing his plans for a Golden Dome, a missile defense system to surround the U.S. What would it do? How much will it cost? Martha Raddatz is here. The urgent warnings tonight about the humanitarian crisis worsening in Gaza. The UN now warning 14,000 babies could die within 48 hours. Back in the U.S. tonight, the police video just made public a deadly shooting at a gym. Authorities revealing this could have been much worse, what they believe saved people in that gym. The security breach at a New York airport, a driver crashing through the gate, driving right onto the runway. The break-in we're learning about at the home of actor Anthony Anderson. And tonight here, we remember actor George Wendt and that famous greeting. Everybody knew his name. Tonight here, we celebrate the Cheers star, and we went back to find so many of his one-liners. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News.
Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, calls for £1 billion tax raid on savers.
Bush has sent a secret memo to Rachel Reeves pushing for a new tax raid. This is according to a new report by The Telegraph.
The alleged document proposes 8 tax increases, including reinstating the pensions, lifetime allowance and changing your dividend tax.
So it brings into question, is your money safe under Labour?
Britain's ready to sanction top Israelis over the offensive in Gaza as Sir Keir Starmer and David Lammy condemn the treatment of Palestinians.
In a GB News exclusive, we can reveal that the deal on the Chagos Islands is set to be signed this week. SAF reports the deal had been pushed into the long grass.
A wake up for water companies. A record number of criminal investigations are launched as sewage issues rise. Your thoughts welcome.
As new figures show, over 55s hold £3.7 trillion in property wealth, over 2/3 of the nation's private housing wealth. We're asking, should we increase property tax on the wealthy?
If you've been hoping for a bit of rain, perhaps to water your garden, then I do have some good news across some central and many southern parts with some wet weather here today. But the north is looking drier. I'll have the details coming up.
Very good to see you. Good to have you on board. I'm Eamon Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
This is a Fox News alert. 6 of the 10 escaped inmates in New Orleans are still on the loose, but someone new is behind bars, 33-year-old maintenance worker Sterling Williams. According to Louisiana Attorney General, Williams said he turned off the water in the cell before the men removed a toilet and a sink, cut through the steel bars, and then just slipped out. Williams says one of the escapees, Antoine Macy, threatened to shank him if he didn't do it, and another tried to steal his phone. Here with me now is someone who knows manhunts better than anyone, Dwayne Chapman, a.k.a. Dog, the Bounty Hunter. Dog, good to see you. Your take on this crazy story.
Well, there's a lot of different things. Number one, what does 10 felons doing in one cell? How did they ever get out of there without anyone watching them? So I think that far, not seeing surveillance, all that, I think it is definitely an inside job.
Well, so the maintenance worker admitted to turning off the water, but essentially is saying he did so under duress or threat. Now, why he wouldn't have just gone to someone and said, these guys are threatening me, that makes zero sense to me.
Absolutely. And how, if they're going to shank him, they're supposed to search the cell, especially that biggest cell, every single day. So how did anyone even have a shank? It's a lot different, like a county city jail than prison. So how'd they get it in there?
Is there any reason whatsoever in today's day and age with surveillance capability, all the high-tech surveillance we have, even in prisons that are under a lot of stress, and this was because overcrowded, obviously, is there any reason this should ever happen?
No, I've heard from a lot of people down there that it's a very poor, they don't have the money to do anything. They keep cutting their funding, and taking away what they got. So when you do that, this is exactly what's going to happen. 10 men together, all violent, most of them gun charges. You start sitting in the cell and planning, and some of them sit there for almost a year before they're given a preliminary hearing. So I don't know what's going on down there. It's absolutely insanity.
I saw Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana, last night at the White House, and we talked for a few minutes about this, but I can tell you he wants answers. Apparently, Dog, it's not the first escape that one of these criminals has been part of. 2019, a jail in northeast Louisiana. Macy is the one who allegedly threatened to shank that janitor, cut through a chain link fence, hopped into a car driven by an accomplice, and then was later found in the day 300 miles away in Texas. So he has some experience in it.
Yes, and I don't know if he's the oldest one. The oldest one was somewhere in their 40s, and he's the one running the show. And a lot of those guys, some of them's 19 years old, 21, 22.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News. Good evening, I'm John Dickerson. I'm Maurice Dubois. There are more than 1 million inmates in America's prisons and jails tonight, -6, who are still on the run after busting out of a New Orleans jail on Friday.
They were among 10 who escaped. The 4 others have been captured. Now a maintenance worker at the jail has been arrested for allegedly helping with the breakout.
3 other employees of the sheriff's department have been suspended. One of the fugitives is a convicted murderer. 3 others are charged with murder, so they are all considered dangerous.
Katie Weiss is a CBS News correspondent in New Orleans. And Katie, what is the latest on the manhunt and the investigation tonight?
Good evening. We're learning more about the maintenance worker who allegedly helped the inmates escape. He confessed to police how and why he did it. More than 200 police officers are hunting for the 6 prisoners still roaming free. Here's what we know about their escape. It started after midnight early Friday morning. Investigators say 33-year-old Sterling Williams, a maintenance worker at the Orleans Parish Prison, turned off the water to the cell. The prisoners, using a tool, then removed a toilet and sawed through steel bars to break out. Williams was arrested and charged with helping the inmates escape. According to an arrest affidavit, inmate Antoine Massey threatened to shank Williams if he did not help. Massey previously escaped from another Louisiana detention center in 2019. At 1:01 a.m., surveillance video shows 10 inmates running away and scaling a prison wall before crossing a busy highway. It took more than 7 hours before they were discovered missing during a routine head count. 2 hours later, law enforcement notified the public. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrell.
I think they've had the capacity to leave the city. Them being out gives them the capacity to leave. Now, the reality of that is they have to get resources to be able to leave.
Within hours, police were able to pick up Kendall Miles. He and another inmate were spotted by facial recognition cameras, walking down none other than Bourbon Street. The other remains at large. Are you fearful for your safety?
Tonight, Inside Job, the jail worker accused of helping 10 inmates escape. Still on the run, the hunt is on in New Orleans for 6 inmates considered armed and dangerous at large. Law enforcement say a worker admitted to shutting off the water in his cell so they could pull the toilet off the wall and escape. Now more workers have been put on leave as the manhunt continues. Spring severe storms power up again and again with 37 million under threat. Homes pulverized, and now the evening threat to hard-hit areas. Plus, was human error to blame for sirens not going off in St. Louis? The congresswoman charged with assault by the DOJ after a standoff at an ICE detention facility. What federal prosecutors say she did, as Democratic leaders say the Trump administration is interfering with her duties as a member of Congress. With summer nearly here, why so many sunscreens may not protect you. What to know? Just in, could some of the NFL's biggest stars be Olympics bound? And it's not easy being green. In other words of wisdom for the class of 2025, Hallie Jackson picks Kermit's brain ahead of his big commencement speech.
This is NBC Night News with Lester Holt.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. On the Navaz is on assignment. On the NewsHour tonight, President Trump rallies House Republicans on Capitol Hill, making a personal pitch for passing his sweeping tax and spending cuts bill. Deadly tornado sparks scrutiny of FEMA's preparedness as the White House overhauls the agency and slashes its staffing. And Jonathan Capehart reflects on the life lessons and revelations chronicled in his new memoir, a candid exploration of his journey towards self-discovery.
I can't impart the lessons that I learned without writing about the hard things I had to go through in order to learn them.
On this Tuesday night, Gaza's deepening humanitarian crisis. The pressure piling on Israel to end its military offensive as millions of Palestinians starve.
There are babies who are in urgent utilizing of these supplements.
Inflation slides down. What's behind it and the potential impact on interest rates? The problems enveloping Canada Post as it faces another potential strike.
It cost $3 billion in the last 4 to 5 years.
What do they need to do to survive? And everybody knew his name. The tributes pouring in for Cheers star George Wendt. Good evening and thanks for joining us. The pressure is mounting on Israel's government. Its allies, including Canada, are using their harshest language yet, demanding an end to Israel's escalating military campaign in Gaza. In a joint statement, Britain, France, and Canada say they will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. And Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai posted this today. It makes me sick to my stomach to see Israel's cruelty and brutality in Gaza. Our collective humanity calls for global and immediate action. I call on every world leader to put maximum pressure on the Israeli government to end this genocide and protect civilians. Israel's prime minister remains defiant, Benjamin Netanyahu vowing he will take control of all of Gaza. His critics say it's no longer a war on Hamas, but an unbridled attack on civilians. A former Israeli general and current opposition politician said today Israel is becoming a pariah state. A sane country does not wage war against civilians, does not kill babies as a pastime, and does not engage in mass population displacement. More than 50,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Our coverage begins with Jackson.
Warm welcome if you're just joining us on Daybreak. These are the headlines. 19 more Palestinians killed overnight by Israel in Gaza, including a 1-week-old baby. The bombings continuing as a few aid trucks were allowed to cross the border, but the vital supplies still not unloaded and so not getting anywhere near the hundreds of thousands of people in dire need. The UK suspends free trade negotiations with Israel and applies sanctions because of its actions. Planning to put US weapons in space for the first time, US President Donald Trump reveals he's Golden Dome missile defense program, which he wants in place before the end of his term. However, the Pentagon is still working out what exactly the system would need to do. And France's presidential palace calls for a measured response after a new report on the Muslim Brotherhood's activities says the movement poses a threat to French national unity. 19 Palestinians have been killed overnight by Israel in Gaza, including a 1-week-old baby. Benjamin Netanyahu and his troops continue their military offensive to take full control of Gaza. After a total and complete blockade for over 11 weeks and clear signs of starvation, Israel let a few trucks across the border this week, But UN officials say they still haven't been able to unload any of them and bring vital aid, baby food on the first handful of trucks to those in dire need. On Tuesday, the UN humanitarian chief said that 14,000 babies could die within hours. Oliver Farry reports.
These pictures released by the Israeli military showed trucks lined up on the border with Gaza, some of 93, it says, it allowed into the enclave on Tuesday to distribute aid. But the United Nations said that none of the aid that got through had been distributed. The trucks were carrying flour for bakeries, food for soup kitchens, medical supplies and baby food, the latter of which the UN has been prioritising in the first shipments. But one British surgeon working in Gaza says the situation couldn't be any more urgent.
Because of the blockade, there's so little stuff getting in, there's no food getting in, so people are starving, there's very little medical supply.
Today, inundated towns and rooftop rescues. Floodwaters rise across New South Wales mid-north coast.
It's challenging for the community. This is a 1 in 200 year flood that we've seen.
Rail authorities apologise to commuters as major delays continue on the Sydney train network.
We will not be returning to the normal timetable for trains in New South Wales in the afternoon peak.
Trade talks off the table. The UK suspends negotiations with Israel with outrage growing over its military expansion in Gaza. And former Prime Minister John Howard raises concerns over the Nationals' decision to pull out of the coalition. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. The New South Wales State Emergency Service has made over 280 rescues as floodwaters rise across the mid-north coast and Hunter region, leaving 16,000 residents isolated. People forced.
This is Asia Now.
Good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Ilakia Silveraji at this hour. The United Nations says no aid has been distributed in Gaza, despite Israel allowing a handful of trucks in after an 11-week blockade. International pressure is growing on Israel to halt its expanded military action in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump unveils plans for a multi-billion-dollar defense system inspired by Israel's Iron Dome. He's hoping the Golden Dome will be operational in 2 years. China condemns new chip export cuts from Washington as authorities vow action against what they call bullying tactics. Good morning, everyone. It's 6 o'clock on today's show. The Kenyan mission to reclaim Haiti's capital from the gangs. Plus, what is the Morgan McSweeney strategy and why it could decide the fate of Keir Starmer's political fortune? It's Wednesday, the 21st of May. Coming up, we join a peacekeeping mission through the GAD move in the dark.
There's been some gunfire working out where it's coming from. There's more gunfire now. The road is close to there, so they definitely are there.
In Gaza, 55 people are killed in Israeli strikes as Israel pushes ahead with its offensive despite mounting international pressure. The union at the centre of Birmingham bid strike accused government commissioners of trying to sabotage talks. And in sport, there were seasons in Premier League history that United go head-to-head in the final. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show.
El jefe Sean to encontrar
civilians tried in military courts. This is the practice Ugandan lawmakers brought back with a controversial bill on Tuesday after the Supreme Court ruling had banned court-martialing for civilians in January. Such trials were in use for the last 2 decades despite widespread criticism and concern. Human rights organizations such as Amnesty International say that Uganda is using these trials as a means of repressing dissent ahead of the 2026 general election. The bill has also sparked an outcry among opposition leaders who warned that the new law is a danger to anyone opposing long-term President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986. Museveni, who is expected to run again in the upcoming election, is set to sign the bill within days. Sudan has accused the United Arab Emirates of carrying out a drone attack on the wartime administrative capital of Port Sudan earlier this month. Speaking in New York on Monday, Khartoum's ambassador to the United Nations, Al-Arith Idris, alleged the operation was launched from a UAE military base with support from Emirati naval vessels in the Red Sea. It's the first time that Sudan has accused the Gulf state of direct military intervention in its civil war against the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Khartoum recently cut diplomatic ties with the UAE, accusing it of arming and funding the rebel group in the deadly war, which is in its 3rd year. The UAE has denied the accusation and did not immediately comment on this latest statement. Sudan is calling on the UN, the African Union and the Arab League to investigate the incident and hold those responsible accountable. The World Health Organization approved a landmark pandemic agreement on Tuesday aimed at better coordination, monitoring and vaccine sharing in the event of future pandemics. The agreement was reached on day 2 of the WHO annual meeting as the UN body grapples with US funding cuts and plans to withdraw that have left the agency struggling to carry out its mandate to promote global health.
Many countries face significant challenges. Many ministers have told me that sudden and steep cuts to bilateral aid are causing severe disruption in their countries and imperiling the health of millions of people. In at least 70 countries, patients are missing out on treatments, health facilities have closed, health workers have lost their jobs, and people face increased out-of-pocket health spending. Although this is a challenge, many countries also see this as an opportunity to leave behind an era of aid dependency and accelerate the transition to sustainable self-reliance based on domestic resources. We're doing our best to support countries to make that transition.
Member countries are expected to agree to raise annual contributions by 20% to support WHO finances and reduce dependency on government's voluntary contributions. Without them, most of our crops would not grow. But the humble bee has been on the decline for decades. Now, a new report to mark World Bee Day has highlighted threats to their existence and the consequences this would have for global food production.
The sort of decline in pollinator continues. We are going to see significant food insecurity because the quality and the quantity of yield will reduce, but also pollination plays a huge role in the nutritious value. So micronutrients in the food are dependent on having good pollination. So not only will we have a reduction in the food quantity that we eat, the quality will also be seriously affected.
Despite the impact of pesticides, climate change, pollution and illnesses on bee populations, solutions exist. According to the report, technology could notably play a role in helping the insects.
I think we need stronger policies and regulations. We also can, I think, take advantage of lots of new and emerging technology that can help us monitor pollinator populations. So unless we know what's there and whether it's doing better or worse or at a status quo, unless we have those monitoring initiatives in place, we won't be able to know if something is declining.
Some other initiatives to protect bees include growing crops with more pollen and nectar, transitioning to electric vehicles to cut down on fumes, and creating more flower-rich habitats.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.